over in the Metro East right now, according to a parent, to the whole Pop-Tart story. It's going to drive you crazy. We'll talk about that coming up, so stick around for that. Back to the story that I talked about at the top of the hour, if you missed that, is the case in Maryland where the 14-year-old girl got raped at her high school, and come to find out the two boys who did it, the 17 and 18-year-olds, were illegals who came into the country, and sounds like maybe the Obama administration wrapped their arm around them as children refugees, and these are the kids they spread out all across the country, and they got enrolled in a high school up in Maryland, and lo and behold, guess what happened next? And a lot of parents in Maryland are upset about that, as you might be if it happened at your kid's high school. And I wanted to talk more about it. I listened to Marc Krikorian. I saw he was a guest on, I believe, Tucker Carlson the other night. Marc, how are you, sir?
Doing very well, thank you.
Marc's with the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS.org, correct, Marc?
Yep.
On the website. So if people want to go there and read more of their thoughts on this. This is frustrating. I called my local school districts. I called the state education departments in Illinois and Missouri to find out if we had the same rules here as they did in Maryland, and they informed me that it's federal policy handed down by the Obama administration that you can't ask what the immigration status is of somebody coming in, and regardless of whether they're illegal or not, you have to enroll them in public schools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's been the law. Well, it's not the law. It's a Supreme Court ruling, but that's been the case for a long time. The bigger problem is upstream from the school is why were these teenagers, who were, both of them apparently, crossed illegally last year. Both of them live with, the older one lives with his father, the younger one lives with an uncle apparently, so they were, both of them almost certainly illegal. So they were smuggled by their illegal immigrant parents into the United States, and under Obama policy, and they were doing this because it's the Obama policy, they were simply delivered at our expense to their illegal immigrant relatives in the United States. That is the real problem and the source of the problem. Obviously, that catch and release policy, which is what informally it's called, has been ended under President Trump, but there's tens of thousands of these young people supposedly fleeing gang violence, but in fact many of them are themselves members of these gangs coming here to recruit new members.
I understand why schools wouldn't do a background check on someone, but as we pointed out earlier, we've got local schools here in the St. Louis area that had lost their accreditation, and a court in Missouri ruled that kids in an unaccredited district were allowed to go to a neighboring district if they wanted to. Well, the minute that announcement was made, the neighboring school district said, "Wait a minute, who's going to pay for it? Are those tax dollars going to be transferred over here to cover the cost?" But that's never an issue if the child's there illegal. The public taxpayers picking up the bill, and we don't know how many there are, right?
Absolutely. The local school especially.
Yeah.
Or it depends on the state. Some places the state pays most of the bill, but the point is the feds aren't paying any of that cost at all. And in fact, this is an interesting thing that hasn't been really discussed. People are saying, what was this 18-year-old man doing in a class with a girl, 14-year-old girl? Well, he was in ninth grade, But the reason is that the Justice Department won't allow them to have these separate, like after, evening classes or something for these kids. We last year had the mayor of a city outside Boston who has a lot of these so-called unaccompanied minors in her city. What the school wanted to do was set up school at night so you didn't have these people, and many of them are actually not minors. They lied about their age, and Border Patrol is not allowed to investigate and verify. So we're talking about guys in their 20s. They were, potentially going to be putting in middle school.
Right.
And so what they did is they set up a night classes, because really they're just illegals coming to work, frankly. The guy, they're teenagers, but they're coming to work.
They're coming here to work, right.
And so they set up night school, and the Justice Department said, oh, no, it has to be exactly the same. If there's even a single difference, if it's 1 hour less instruction than regular schools, we're coming down on you, and you're going to have to put them in your regular classes. So it's not even like the schools had any flexibility. to do something different with these students. They're stuck with the results of this ridiculous Obama-era policy.
This is the superintendent of the Maryland School District. They had a meeting last night, and people were quizzing him on how this guy ended up mixed in with the general population of freshmen if he's an adult.
Be clear, we do not know what anyone's immigration status is in this school system because the law says we don't collect that.
And then he went on to say that the kid was placed at the level where they thought he needed to be, irregardless of whether some people might think that's a little strange. I talked to a local school district today who said, well, if you talk to your kid who's in high school, they'll very often, a sophomore or freshman might be in a class with a kid that's a junior or senior. They didn't perceive that to be all that unusual. So,
well, sure, it can happen. There's upper-level classes that, younger kids, sophomores or freshmen are, sort of more advanced, that kind of thing. But these guys often really belong, at least at the educational level, they belong in like 5th or 6th grade. Mm. And that's something that even these schools won't do. So they put them in high school, but they put them in the lowest class in high school. But the fact is, they shouldn't be in the general population, especially they don't know a word of English. It's not just that the schools didn't do background checks, it's that there's even the Border Patrol and ICE had no way of doing background checks. And, I don't believe that the 18-year-old here didn't have a criminal record in Guatemala, or whether it's a record or not. I mean, the government doesn't work very well, but wasn't involved in crime in Guatemala because a choir boy doesn't turn into a rapist overnight. There's usually steps in between. And there's no way to know. This is why they never should have been released into the United States. Just as a side note here, or the reason these releases were happening, the pretext, let me put it that way, Obama was justifying it by saying that a law that Congress had passed about minors, unaccompanied minors who were trafficked. Trafficking basically means you're kidnapped for the sex trade.
Okay.
And unaccompanied means you don't have any family members or relatives in the United States. So what he said is, well, these people are covered by that law, even though they were not being trafficked. They were just, they were brought by smugglers who had been paid by their relatives in the United States. In other words, the law did not apply to them at all, and yet what the Obama administration did is use that as the legal pretext to waive tens of thousands of illegal aliens into the United States. It's outrageous.
Yeah. I love the point that you made last night on the Tucker Carlson program about the fact that people get frustrated and they say, well, why are you blaming all illegal immigrants for this? Well, I'm not, but the point you made was a good one. The percentage of undocumented people or illegal aliens who are criminals may be lower than the general population, but the bottom line is if once we've identified them and taken them into custody, first of all, they violated something by breaking into the border, but then we're just turning them loose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, bad people do bad things all the time. It's not the government's fault, but it is the government's fault if they were in custody. They were illegal immigrants in custody, and the government, this is under Obama, chose not only to let them go with a piece of paper saying someday we may call you about an immigration hearing, but actually use taxpayer money to put them on a bus to go and join their family members. Basically, under Obama, the federal government was part of the smuggling conspiracy. They finished the job of the smugglers. There's no excuse for that. This isn't about just some random guy who happens to have been Hispanic or happens to have been an immigrant who commits crime. If that pisses you off just because the person is Hispanic or even an immigrant, then that's wrong.
You've got some different issues.
That's not the case here.
Right.
Illegal immigrants who were let go by the Obama administration.
Yep. It's got to be fixed. And the thing about it is I haven't heard Donald Trump talk a whole lot about the fix. He just talked about enforcing the law. We're enforcing the laws that are on the books, and I'm listening every day to immigration attorneys around the country getting on television to scream about this uptick in deportations. These are often people that were deported by Obama's administration, but it was simply never enforced.
Oh, yeah, over 900,000 people in the United States who have deportation orders from either this administration, I mean, the previous one, it could have been, who knows how old they are, but they were ordered deported, and they just ignored it.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's not like, what they did is they got a letter in the mail saying, hey, please, you've been ordered deported. It's like, well, who's going to show up for that? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Or they never showed up for court in the first place, and the judge just orders them deported because they failed to appear. Well, you can't, I mean, what kind of system, how much credibility does the system have where almost 1 million people who've been ordered deported just ignored it and are still living here, and nobody's looking for them? At least under Obama, nobody was looking for them.
Stunning. Marc Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies, I appreciate your time today. I'll direct people to your website at cis.org. Thanks, Marc.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I wanted to get Marc on here and pick his brain. To get to the point, it's not about being against immigrants, which is how people try to paint this whenever you bring it up. Well, what does the fact that they're illegal immigrant have to do with it? Hopefully Marc just explained that for you. That at some point we had these 2 children in custody, and instead of putting them on a plane and flying them back to wherever the hell they came from and dropping them off, we put them on a bus at taxpayer expense and shipped them across the country to Maryland. That's what was going on under the previous administration, which liked to pick and choose which laws it was going to enforce. And now the left is mad because Donald Trump is enforcing the laws that are on the books, and they act like he's a mean man. It's just unbelievable. 314-969-9797. When we come back, I'll try to get some of your phone calls. I want to switch and talk for a moment about this situation in Illinois where a kid has gotten in trouble for something that, maybe it required a conversation. Maybe it was a learning moment. The fact that the kid's been kicked out of school at age 4 is just unbelievable. So we're going to get to that. We'll get to your phone calls. 314-969-9797.
Marc Cox Show on FM News Talk 97.1, 98.7, AM 1490, and 97.1talk.com.
Hey guys, Lady Jane's Haircuts for Men is opening on the 20th of March, and I'll be there on the 23rd from 4 to 6 at Lady Jane's in Brentwood. Take advantage of the grand opening special. Haircuts are just $12 at Lady Jane's in Brentwood.
So you may have trouble with your windows, and when do you notice that? Maybe you notice it in the winter when you realize your room's a lot colder than it should be because the seal has broken on your old windows, and repairing it is difficult, right? If it's even possible. Or we had that recent warm streak, and maybe you went to raise your window, and that's when you realized there was a problem with it. Well, nobody likes to think about having to replace their windows, but if you do, you want